Bubba Wallace walked away from Atlanta believing he had done everything possible to avoid breaking NASCAR's rules. He backed out of the throttle, avoided taking the lead, and was convinced he hadn't gained any unfair advantage. But just minutes after crossing the finish line, everything changed. NASCAR reviewed the final lap and erased what looked like a hard-earned runner-up finish. The decision immediately divided the NASCAR world. Many fans believed the penalty was far too harsh, while others argued the rule had been applied exactly as written. Now, Kevin Harvick has stepped into the debate. While he understands why Bubba Wallace and many fans are frustrated, the former Cup Series champion believes Bubba Wallace's biggest argument simply doesn't hold up. At the same time, Kevin Harvick also thinks NASCAR may need to take another look at the rule itself. So why is Kevin Harvick siding with NASCAR on the penalty while still questioning the rule? And what does his verdict mean for Bubba Wallace moving forward? Stay with us until the end because we're breaking down Kevin Harvick's full reaction, NASCAR's explanation, and why this Atlanta controversy is far from over. The Atlanta race looked like a huge step forward for Bubba Wallace. The number 23 team had spent the afternoon battling near the front, surviving restarts, avoiding trouble, and putting themselves in position for one of their strongest finishes of the season. As the field entered the final lap, Bubba Wallace saw an opportunity. Blaney and Carson Hocevar were fighting for the win, and Bubba Wallace tried to squeeze into the battle by making it 3 wide down the backstretch. But during that move, his car dropped below the double yellow line. The finish looked spectacular in real time. A few minutes later, everything changed. NASCAR reviewed the final lap and ruled that Bubba Wallace had violated the out-of-bounds rule. Instead of celebrating second place, Bubba Wallace was dropped all the way back to 29th, losing valuable championship points in the process. The penalty didn't change what fans witnessed on the track, but it completely changed the final results. Bubba Wallace didn't hide how frustrated he was. His biggest argument wasn't that he crossed below the line. It was that he never actually benefited from doing it. Bubba Wallace explained, "It says advancing your position, which I did not do." He said he was already on the brakes because he knew going below the line was dangerous and didn't want to gain an unfair advantage. According to Bubba Wallace, if that move had truly helped him, he should have come out with the lead. Instead, he believed he remained behind the same cars. Many fans agreed with him. That difference in interpretation is exactly why this finish became one of the most talked about moments of the Atlanta weekend. Social media quickly filled with comments saying the punishment felt excessive, especially since Bubba Wallace appeared to lift off the throttle instead of using the lower lane to steal the victory. But Kevin Harvick saw the incident differently. Speaking on Speed alongside Will Buxton, Kevin Harvick made it clear that, in his opinion, NASCAR made the correct call. Coming from a former Cup Series champion, Kevin Harvick's opinion immediately became one of the biggest talking points after the race. Kevin Harvick said, "This is a pretty easy rule to regulate." He continued, "When you see him go from behind those cars to beside those cars, it's pretty hard to argue that you don't have an advantage in advancing your position." For Kevin Harvick, the replay made the situation pretty clear. From his point of view, the issue wasn't whether Bubba Wallace kept the position after lifting off the throttle. The important part was that his car went below the yellow line and briefly improved its position alongside the cars ahead. Kevin Harvick believes that's exactly what NASCAR's rule is written to prevent, which is why he felt the officials made the correct call. Once Bubba Wallace drove below the yellow line and improved his position relative to the cars ahead, Kevin Harvick believed the rule had already been broken. Kevin Harvick also suggested that Bubba Wallace simply lost focus for a brief moment. He explained, "I think overall, I think he just kind of lost his train of thought and focus on where he needed to be on the racetrack right there. That comment wasn't a personal attack. Instead, it sounded like Kevin Harvick believed Bubba Wallace got caught in the intensity of a last-lap battle and made a split-second decision that ended up costing him. What's interesting, though, is that Kevin Harvick didn't stop there. Even while agreeing with NASCAR's decision, he admitted he isn't completely convinced Atlanta should even use this rule. Kevin Harvick said, "I don't know that we really need the double yellow line rule at Atlanta." He pointed out that Atlanta races differently than Daytona and Talladega. The banking, the racing style, and the layout create a different type of competition. So while Kevin Harvick believes NASCAR enforced the current rule correctly, he also thinks it's fair to question whether the rule still belongs at this particular track. That distinction is important. Kevin Harvick wasn't defending the rule itself. He was defending NASCAR's consistency. If the rule exists, officials have to enforce it the same way every time. Otherwise, every close finish becomes a debate over interpretation instead of the written rulebook. NASCAR officials later backed up that same reasoning. They explained that attempting to give positions back doesn't erase the violation. Once a driver goes below the line and improves position, the penalty applies regardless of what happens afterward. That explanation may not satisfy everyone, but it does explain why Bubba Wallace's argument wasn't enough to overturn the decision. The result also had real consequences. Instead of leaving Atlanta with one of his best finishes of the year, Bubba Wallace lost a huge amount of points in an incredibly tight playoff battle. Every position matters this late in the season, making the penalty even more painful. Now the conversation shifts toward the future. Should NASCAR keep the double yellow line rule exactly as it is? Or should Atlanta have its own version that reflects the way the track has evolved since its reconfiguration? That's likely to remain a major talking point over the coming weeks. One thing, however, is becoming much clearer. Kevin Harvick believes fans can absolutely debate whether the rule should exist. But as long as it does, he says NASCAR got this call right. And that's why one of the sport's most respected former champions ended up siding with the officials instead of Bubba Wallace. Whether NASCAR eventually changes the rule or not, this finish has ensured that the debate isn't ending anytime soon. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more NASCAR news, race analysis, and the biggest stories from around the garage, make sure you subscribe to NASCAR Nation News and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.